Hi, everyone. Welcome back to a new episode of Emerging Brands Podcast with Kelly Bennett. Today, we have a very cool jewelry designer on. Her website is stunning. Her jewelry designs are stunning. She even has on the most gorgeous stack of necklaces right now. Alexis Russell is the founder and chief creative director of Alexis Russell, and she's on the podcast today. So, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me. So nice being here.
So nice to meet you. I really was taken when I was looking at the design aesthetic and the elegance of all your pieces. It just felt very intentional and thoughtful, and also that you had a clear point of view, which in the jewelry industry I know is pretty challenging. So, I want to talk about all things of your brand, but where I always like to start a conversation is your background. And I, especially a creative founder, I'm just always so curious because usually it's the most twists and turns and pivots and changes. So, what's your background? How did this all start?
Yeah, I would definitely say it was non-traditional. The way that from day one, really, even maybe until where we are now, sometimes feels surreal. Um, but I grew up in the foster care system, so certain things, or maybe certain endeavors in the creative fields weren't always as readily available to me as a child. Nonetheless, like in school, I could always be found in the art room. I was always working with my hands. I think for me, it was also, at the time, I didn't realize it was probably a form of therapy. It was probably a coping mechanism for me, as well as just a peaceful place that I found myself. Because that was, sometimes tough to come by as a kid.
Right.
Um, so having those creative outlets, being able to have access to, ceramics, pottery, painting, watercolor, what have you, eventually jewelry making, was super important for me. So I kind of saw that evolving in high school, and then in college went away to art school. I eventually was an apprentice for a couple jewelers when I was in college, and really got to get a more hands-on experience of what the industry was like. I started to really travel. I started to source stones, and work with these designers, a little bit more one-on-one, which was so integral to the way that I work. Just really hands-on. We source these stones, and we really design from the stone first. So anyhow, that really gave me the knowledge, the some of the connections, and just taught me a lot about the industry. So, but all along the way, I had to be very resourceful. It wasn't all easy, obviously. That all those transitions, and
Right.
being in the creative world, I didn't always feel super supported. Not just because I grew up in the foster system and had kind of a tough childhood, but because you know in capitalism and in our world, it's not always the first thing that people are going to offer you, right, or suggest to you. It might not be the most financially um, beneficial for us. So, or just not recognized as important or valuable by some
Going
people.
down an art career.
Correct.
Right.
Yes. Speaking to that. But I also knew in my heart that that's where I always felt good. Like I said, as a kid, that's where I found peace. That's where I knew my home was. And eventually I branched out on my own, and I started to create my own jewelry line. It just kind of was the natural transition for me. I was really heavily involved in it. I started getting my own torch, putting together. I even went to Home Depot and bought like a little butane torch in the very beginning, just
That's so
melting.
cool.
Yeah, just starting to melt metal and see what happens, right? So it was very exploratory, very bootstrapping. I had $100. Went to my first store, walked in with all my things, and very intimidated and not confident in my work yet. And she bought everything. The owner bought every single thing. She even bought the displays, which I had actually made myself from a craft store, like hardware store, screens and dowels and anyway, screws. And I fashioned these displays. So I left empty handed. I mean, other than my purse, It was a really wild experience, and it showed me I was right where I needed to be, you know what I mean?
Right,
You just need someone to believe in you, to see you, to be seen and heard, especially as a creative, um, anybody, entrepreneur or just a person,
right.
um, to be seen and recognized by someone that says, I see you, I believe in you, I believe in all of this, I want a part of this.
I want it all, literally the whole
All
shebang.
of it. Yes, even these little hardware displays that you made, but that really can propel it did for me. I rolled
Right.
my windows down and went, like, way too fast driving home and called my girlfriend, was, like, so excited that this thing happened that I hadn't, anticipated. But anyhow, that continued that sort of, it's just one thing leading into the next. I never took loans. There weren't big credit cards. There's no investors. There's nothing fancy. It was all just what building and building and building off of what you make and create. And that part of that process was really rewarding to me. It was all tangible. I knew
Right.
what I was making, what was happening, what was coming in and going out, and that was super rewarding to me.
I
Um,
really love that you share about bootstrapping and doing it step by step because I think now in the world of entrepreneurship, it's really easy to get caught up that the only play is that you have to find an investor or you have to raise capital, which for
yeah,
some spaces and verticals like that makes sense. However, you still can build a business step by step and be successful and find your own path. So I really love that you're sharing that because I think that's a good reminder for people who get really anxious about the idea of like, if I don't raise capital, this is never going to happen, right? But what you're saying is being really resourceful and
yes.
using what you have and going and making connections to really build the brand.
That's right, that's right, and, the next step, as you start to evolve is hiring people who are better at it than you are,
Right.
and believing in them and then investing in them, right, is the
So how
next.
long have you been in business now?
So it's almost 20 years, if you can believe that.
Wow.
Yeah, I think 2005 is when I, got my DBA and sort of started officially my own business. And then, it's had such iterations and growths and gone through so many transformations. It feels that long, right? But it also has gone by so fast. Like it's all just happened so fast. When you're working on
Wow.
something you really love, I mean, yeah, there's never enough of it. And I think we'd like to clone ourselves and, add a couple hours to the day as a creative
Totally.
person.
Same, right here. So
Yeah.
for 20 years, has it always been under a personal brand, Alexis Russell, or when did that like the actual brand really start too?
Yeah, so, I started really, a very like I said, bootstrapping, really resourceful. I would show at art festivals, pop-up markets before they were even really a thing.
Right.
I wasn't afraid to go into local boutiques and stores and just like the story that I showed you, that one store led to 50 more stores in about 2 or 3 years. I got a sales rep, that
Wow.
was working along the East Coast, and she eventually from Maine to Florida got us about 50 stores that were carrying our work. So wholesale was really big for us at that time. Building ourselves on Etsy. Etsy was huge, or not even necessarily it was huge, but it was one of the only platforms that was really providing this outlet for creative people to really and to be purchased for their work to really be purchased in a
Right.
marketplace. So that was really big for us. And slowly and surely, of course, like building our site and having our first clunky but effective website, right? And then hiring. We've got 22 staff members now, several jewelers that work for us. Our service team is amazing. Our creative team is killer. Just a lot to be proud of. So much to be proud of. It's easy for me to like jump forward to all the awesome things we're doing right now, but I'm happy to backtrack.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to have that growth and to have bootstrap the business, it just speaks to also your tenacity of keep finding the right next step. I mean, that's really impressive. And 20 years as any small business and a creative, I mean, that's really incredible. I didn't realize. I knew you had were a more established brand, but I didn't realize 20 years. That's really remarkable.
Yeah, yeah,
And
we've been
you
doing it.
you really have. This is great. And I like talking to founders with this much experience. When you started out and maybe to where you are now, what did you find was like your differentiator? Like what made your pieces stand out from the rest? Because I know a lot of especially creatives struggle with that no matter what their product category is. Sometimes they really have a hard time with that. And yours, you have a very distinct style and vibe, which really
Yeah.
struck me. How did that happen? I would love to hear more.
Yeah, that's interesting. You know what's so funny about that? It's like as much as you can have your own very, distinct aesthetic or vibe about your brand, the way that ours actually came about is through our customers, through the people that were actually purchasing our work. What I started to realize early on was, especially as Alexis Russell started to evolve into engagement rings and bridal. I started with just fun, just jewelry, necklaces, earrings, and much more sort of simple everyday jewelry. And slowly it transitioned into engagement and bridal. And when that happened, we started seeing that customer was like not a specific person, not a type, not a, they'll talk about your target market. And I'm like, I'm not sure I can nail that down. This is such a broad and diverse clientele that we're experiencing. And to show for it, these people were also purchasing, they wanted sunstone, they wanted salt and pepper diamonds, they wanted
Mhm.
hexagon cut instead of your typical round solitaire. We started getting these requests and started really listening to people. They wanted something different. They didn't want to be the same, white diamond maybe that their grandma and their aunt and their sister has. Not that
Right.
there is a time and a place for that, and that isn't a beautiful thing. And in fact, we offer white diamonds as well, in a myriad of cuts. However, we were listening and hearing that these people wanted permission to be themselves. They wanted a place where they could be authentic, where they could be heard, where they could be seen, and they could feel comfortable. It didn't have to be a 3-month salary or a year's salary or whatever we've been told by other marketing campaigns. It could be a gold band if that's what felt right for you and your partner. What represents your love isn't up to capitalism to tell you or for society to tell you what that should look like. That comes from within. That's a decision that you get to make with your partner. It's not something that we believe that should be told. So when you go on our site, that's where you're in this experience. It's not just a website where you're making purchases. You can go on there and just have fun, honestly, and design a morganite ring with salt and pepper side stones, and rose gold, and just
Right.
see what it looks like. There's no add to cart. But you can have this whole experience and really kind of figure out who you are, what that looks like, what's your style. If it's a ring you're wearing every day, traditionally people wear it every day. I think we should have more of a say and be involved in that. And I think it should feel right. I think it should feel authentic to who we are.
So
And
really
so
your
in
target audience
jewelry,
wants the unique piece, right?
exactly. Exactly. So providing that, not being afraid to listen to your clients and say, you know what? Yeah, these are my designs, but also this is what people want. They want to be able to be, to express themselves in this way with, a tanzanite and a moonstone, or we have amazing our men's collections. Like we just launched a new men's collection. It's amazing. But nonetheless, there's a space for all of that to exist, right? You have permission, whatever your love looks like. You can find something on our site that's probably gonna match pretty well, and we're really proud to provide all of those options and to offer that type of experience to people.
That's really interesting. I have a friend who recently got engaged and she did a salt and pepper diamond. And it was the first time I had seen it. And I was like, this is really cool. And she's like, I just wanted to feel like myself. And so I think more and more people are thinking outside the box. There's more opportunity and more conversation around that too. And I like how you're really driving that conversation. And
Yeah.
also your website having the ability to get creative. Like that also sounds very on brand for just
Yeah.
knowing about your story too. So I love that. How did you then more so like scale because it is so custom and can have so many different variables. I would love to hear like behind the scenes how you're
Yeah.
organizing that because it sounds
Yeah.
awesome, but I'm like, whoa, that
You
must be
know, I'll be honest, like it's some of the simplest not advice but tool that that we used was in the early days of Instagram, you know, before we were kind of controlled by algorithms and um, you know, uh, reels and all these things.
Yeah.
I hopped on there myself and was like, all right, let's see what like, you know, I think we were working with a PR agency at the time, and she's like, listen, this Instagram thing is it's I think it could be really good, and you know, you have a super visual product, like why not
Right.
give it? It's a visual platform, give it a go. I'm like, all right, sure, you know. And so I'm at this point in time still. This is maybe 2010, I don't know, and but I'm at the bench, so my hands are like covered. You know, I look like a mechanic most of the day, right? Because that's what jewelers actually look like behind the scenes. It's a dirty job. But then I'd make this gorgeous ring and I'd want to show it off. I'm like, all right, we have to do this Instagram thing. Let's take this picture, post it, let them see. And my hands, like I said, were covered in polishing compound and like nothing. The nails are all chipped and it's nothing to really take any picture of and show off. But the ring is stunning. And I felt this urgency to share it. And then people started really engaging with that. They're like, wow, look at this. This is someone who's actually making this by, you know, by hand. They're designing it, they're sharing it, and it sounds really simple right now in 2024, but back then
Oh, especially.
it was really special, and it was like people could go on every day and see what ring I was working on, what stack a bride what might be getting in Missouri tomorrow, you know, and I would tell that story on Instagram, and then they would followers would start to communicate. They'd be like, "We love these new lab grown diamonds. Like, are you getting more? Can we get them in a kite shape?" And I would listen to that, and then I would go and source these. I would make them, and I'd put them on Instagram. So
Yeah.
honestly, if you want to know how to scale, just listen. Just listen to your customers. Just listen to them. They'll tell you, but you have to get out of your own head of what you think is the right thing to do and the exact perfect thing at the right time. No, your customers will tell you, we like this that you're doing. Look at your likes, look at your comments, listen to the whatever emails, however you're engaging with your clients. Maybe it's at shows. If you're lucky enough to be in person, listen to them and they'll show back up when you bring tanzanite back around or lab grown diamonds. Um, so Instagram was a huge and integral part of our business. The referrals that came from Instagram were astounding. And then COVID hit. And for many companies, for many businesses, that was not a good thing. And they experienced, and by no means am I saying it was a good thing.
I heard you.
We've all suffered, right? And that's its own story. In terms of our business, though, shutting those doors was devastating and dumbfounding, and I had no idea where we were headed. But it ended up being the best few years of sales and that we've ever experienced. I think a lot of people were home together, and they understood that you know, this maybe it was time. Maybe we should, you know, shop for that special ring, and so
Really interesting.
yeah, and so we really saw an increase, a huge increase in sales during that time. And we're able to work with people virtually and all of that. So um, so those two things were really impactful just on the trajectory of our company and
Right.
what we did. And obviously hiring the right people along the way. I can't say enough about the support that you set yourself up with. Set yourself up with people who believe in you, who respect you, and who value you. And make sure you feel the same way about them. I would think that's obvious, but make sure you feel the same way about them, because why would you want anyone in the driver's seat or even in the passenger seat of something you so love and treasure and work hard
Right.
for that you don't respect and value, you know? But if you do, that person's gonna, you never know what those people could be capable of. The people that have helped me along the way and believed in me
Right.
are a huge part of why I'm here.
I really appreciate everything that you're saying because it's really those like tried and true, back to basic type of principles of hiring well, trusting the people that you're hiring people that it also sounds like that you enjoy collaborating and working with,
Yes.
right? And taking it step by step. Again, a lot of that could get lost in the year 2024 of business. And so I'm really like soaking up everything
Yeah.
that you're saying
Maybe
because
we do need to take it back to basics a little bit,
yeah,
right?
I really, this really resonates with me because this is how I like to build also. Because
Yeah.
you could
Yeah.
add on all the fun bells and whistles of modern marketing and all that, sure. But if you don't have the real basics, and this is why I'm so bullish on like brand strategy of like, what are you? What do you stand for? What makes you different? Who are you talking to? What do you sell? Like really
Yes.
simple stuff.
Yes.
I think sometimes gets really, there's so many hot takes on TikTok and Instagram, which are great platforms, but I think it spins people in so many directions.
Yeah. No,
Whereas
I think
just
you're
knowing who
those.
you are
Yes. Yes.
will move you forward.
Yeah.
So I love that you're saying all of this. Is there anything else as far as scaling that you found really helpful? Again, how personalized your products are, how one-on-one of an experience it is, and that it's handcrafted products. Um, Anything else as far as maybe business or just how your team has handled that, or just you like being a part of it, but also needing to delegate, like
Yeah.
anything more
Yeah.
in that space? Because I think we need more conversations around that stuff.
Yeah, for sure. I think scaling, I think the things that I spoke to on scaling and being super foundational, like you echoed, shouldn't be overlooked, right? Um, In addition to that, I think, paying attention to the type of brand that you are and making sure that the platforms that you use are appropriate, right? So for me, when Twitter was really popular and everyone was, communicating in that way, it just wasn't an appropriate space for us. So we're not going to waste time, in certain sectors that aren't appropriate for us. Places like Pinterest now, brides are maybe building boards, right? They're planning. There's a whole story going on for these brides and we want to be a part of that. So that was a platform that we worked with Pinterest a little bit on some campaigns to work together
Cool.
to create more of a presence there. So small things can still be impactful and continuing to feed, it's not always just the big stuff, but it's like continuing to feed all these small things. Like, that didn't necessarily change the game for us, working with Pinterest in that way, but it continued to feed some of the outlets and some of the platforms in which we do perform really well, in which our product belongs there. So I think you have to continue also to change with tech. I hate to say it. I
Right.
was going to say like time, and as time evolves and as year after year, you have to sort of change with the times. I think it was what we used to say, but now it's basically like we have to change right along with tech. And for me, that's a big challenge as a creative person. I don't know about you, Kelly,
Mm-hmm.
but that can be a little bit of a challenge for me. So tech, and that means new platforms. That means constantly evaluating, is this right for me? Is this going to be a good place for my brand? Am I going to be received well? Or is this going to just look like a failure? Because you also don't want to look,
Right.
you don't want to look like you're not doing well,
Humbling, or yeah,
right?
no,
Like you're just
right.
like floundering.
Yeah.
Um, but you want to constantly be evaluating that. So if that's not you, make sure you have someone savvy enough that understands the marketplace, understands what's going on, what's driving things, where sales, where are the young people, where are people shopping now? I mean, even just the way that people shop is completely different than it was 20 years ago. We didn't even have some of these platforms. So
Right.
as a brand that's been around that long, we've had to constantly weather that storm and continuously pivot and enter into um, a new sector and how we represent ourselves and how do you represent yourself on this platform versus this, and yet being cohesive, yet staying true to who we are, right? So there's a lot of work in that, and I think don't get discouraged. If Instagram isn't your spot, maybe TikTok is. TikTok isn't a great spot for engagement rings. You're not swiping up and purchasing an engagement ring for the most part. You
Right.
know,
That
you're
makes sense.
planning. So on Pinterest, you're building this board, you're planning, it's this whole story you're telling. TikTok, you're just killing time in the waiting room. You're not probably trying to buy an engagement ring. So understand your customer. Again, go back to listening. Understand who that customer is. Where are they shopping? How are they shopping? Is it relevant to you? Is this platform even a good place to be telling your story? Because there's people who want to hear it. Just you just have to continuously find what that is. Because like I said, it feels like it's always changing.
Always changing. I could resonate a lot with that because I've been building brands now for 15 years and I remember my first brand that I was working on, getting them on Twitter. And that this was over 15 years ago. And it was like revolutionary that, brands were moving on Twitter. And then it was, Instagram and having a blog and email. So I've also,
Blog.
you know, I had a blog back in the day.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And you're just kind of seeing the path. So now I feel so, unattached to whatever platform it is or
Yes.
okay, I always go back
Yeah.
to storytelling. To me,
Yes.
it's always been the
Yes.
tried and true of like any platform, any year, almost any brand or any vertical that you're in. If you could tell a good story and your brand has this authenticity and feels like humans connecting with each other, to me that has stayed the test of time and the test
Yeah.
of right.
Yeah.
So I always remind people of that because they come to me and they're like, I have this new brand and where should I be? I'm like, all right, what's your story? Like,
Yes.
let's,
Yes.
what is that? And then we could build from there, right? So I really resonate with what you're saying of changing and evolving with the times
Mhm.
and tech, but also staying true to you, which is a
Yes.
really hard balance at times. But it sounds like that's been a really common through line of how
Yeah.
you've built and grown over the years.
Yeah, absolutely. Something you have to keep working on though, right? Like it's not been perfected, something I'm still working on. One I think when you talk about storytelling too, it's sort of that mention that I mentioned about holding the ring with this dirty, jeweler finger, but there was a whole story behind that, right? There was a human there, and
Absolutely.
that I failed to mention that, but that's really what made that sort of successful in Instagram, metrics was people could resonate with that there was a maker, there was someone doing a thing, there was a whole story going on. And it and so I think yes, find your platform, but don't be afraid to show yourself a little bit too. Don't be afraid of the human behind all of this stuff,
Yes.
you
Yes.
know? Because
Yes.
people more and more like they just want to make sure there's still a human happening under all this. So
I
don't hide the
that's
human.
I think that's such a great point and a really, really, really impactful reminder is keeping the humanness because I think even as much as we've gone to almost extremes of tech, we are also swinging back of like we really miss other humans.
I think
And
so.
that really cuts through the noise too.
Yeah, yeah,
It
I
really
think so.
does. So let
Yeah.
me ask you this. What is the vision of your brand? Where do you want to take it? Like what are you seeing on the horizon?
Yeah, so, as I said, jewelry for me was a place that kind of I found myself. It's a place that I was able to kind of belong. And over the years and all the changes, I think what we inevitably ended up being and what we're so proud to continue to be, at Alexis Russell is, a place where everyone belongs. Everyone belongs. The salt and pepper diamonds is as imperfect as they are. Like we all are like that. We're all a version of a salt and pepper diamond, right? Like with our little idiosyncrasies and our flaws and our weaknesses and our strengths and the way we shine differently. As cheesy as it might sound, it really is true. We kind of echo nature in that way because we're a part of it. But we're all kind of little rough diamonds. We're all our own little gemstones, and it can and it should look however you want that to look. And Alexis Russell is just a place in one way that can remind people that they belong 100%, whatever it looks like, however you want it to be. So it's something we're really, really proud of.
Yes, you should be. And that's such a beautiful reminder and mantra. And again, speaks to your brand and speaks to the type of people who you attract.
Yeah.
Most importantly, you shared so much advice in this whole podcast. So thank you. I think that you answered that question 100 times already. But most importantly, what I want to make sure before I have to let you go, where can we shop your stunning jewelry?
Yes, of course, we have a new and improved website that by the time this airs, I believe it should be launched and ready to
Woo!
go. alexisrussell.com. And you can go on there. You can custom design your ring. You can create a whole stack of rings if you like, or you can maybe just get a little something that you love. So see you there.
Thank you so much for your time, for your insight, for your wisdom, your creativity, and just sharing authentically here on the podcast. I really, really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you, Kelly. It was so nice being here with you.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and I'll see you on the next episode.